So I'm walking down the street, and the guy in front of me drops the biggest wad of cash I have ever seen in my life. Immediately, my mouth goes dry with adrenaline, my heart is racing, and I am really worried. I'm back in Russia. Okay, let me give you a little background. So I'm an engineer. I love problems, I love solutions, I love clear-cut answers. I'm also a Californian, so I'm a hugger, I went to school in a surf town, and I recycle my flip-flops. Russia, not so much. There's no clear answers in Russia, and in Russia, flip-flops recycle you. All right, so this is my third or fourth trip there, and I'm decided that I'm finally brave enough to go try and find a bar that I visited with some friends when I was there in college. Now, this bar is perfect in my mind. There was awesome jazz music, good beer, not as good as here, and it was loaded with Russian mobsters. G-Wagons, BMW X5s, all black, dudes in suits, huge bulges under their arms, constantly going in and out of the back room. Totally a good idea to go back to this place. I'm gonna do it. I'm racking my brain, walking through the streets, trying to remember exactly where it is, and it's really just a block off one of the main streets in Moscow, so it's pretty, not terrible. I find my way there, and I'm super stoked that I've found my way back. I'm like rejoicing in my subconscious. And I get to the door, and I see a sign, and it says, I take a minute to decode it from Cyrillic, and it says something like, "Oh, close until 4:30. I look at my watch and think, okay, I can spend an hour somewhere and come back and check out this bar again. I probably spend just a little bit too long looking at the sign, and then decide to myself, instead of going back the way I came, I should go down a different direction. And in Russia, you always have to do the risk analysis. So I stop for a second, look down the street. About 3 long blocks down, there's a big park, lots of people playing, seems good. Halfway between me and the park, there's a police car and a couple of cops just chilling, smoking cigarettes. I'm like, okay, this is a good sign. A few people moving up and down the street. This is good. Risk analysis, acceptable. I'm gonna go this way, check out some new scenery. I'm walking down the street, just checking out the architecture like I do, and that's when the guy in front of me drops the biggest wad of cash I've ever seen in my life. I mean, $100 bills, folded in half, no joke, this thick. Immediately, analysis mode. I am in the middle of a drug deal. This is not good for me. And I'm starting to freak out a little bit. Okay, I'm looking for cover, I'm trying to decide what's about to happen. And that's when I remember there's this guy who's about 10 or 15 feet behind me and to my left, just sort of in and out of my blind spot. And I'm aware of him already, but just keep an eye. And just about the time I get even with that money, he catches up to me, reaches down, picks it up, and says to me, "Nishmi," which means be quiet in Russian, and then, "Может поделим?" And that means, you want to split this? And I look at him, and immediately I realize, no, I'm not in the middle of a drug deal. I'm about to die. There are snipers. There are snipers in windows with scopes on us. They're trying to decide which one of us to shoot first. One of those black SUVs is gonna come tearing around the corner. My ears are listening for the rev of the engine, so I know when to dive out of the way. And I tell him with as much gusto as I can muster in Russian, "Пошёл ты," which means a slightly politer version than "F you." And I make the biggest hand motions I can so that all those snipers know that they should shoot him. I just happen to be here. So he tries again, this time in English. Maybe my accent wasn't perfect when I told him to F off. And once again, I say, "No way, dude, get away." And he sort of looks at me a little surprised and sort of slows his pace down. I'm like, all right, whew, that catastrophe has been averted. I keep going down the street a little further. I'm about even with the cops, and I think, can I yell for the cops? Like, should I be yelling for the cops? And then risk analysis mode. No, definitely not. Russian cops, I'm gonna spend the night in jail, and Russian jails, much like Mexican jails. No bueno. I keep walking, and at this point I'm past the cops far enough that give me a little cushion, so I cut across the street, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting close, I'm almost at the park, I'm nearing freedom. And that's when I look back over real subtly to see the guy who dropped the money sort of going like this. He's looking around, and he points to the guy who picked up the money, and he says something in Russian, shakes his hands like this, "Do you see money on the ground?" And the other guy goes, "I don't know." And then he immediately looks over and goes, "That guy." And I'm like, oh no, this is not good. Immediately, risk analysis mode. Can I sprint all the way to the park and make it to the crowd? Nope, my heart is still pounding. I'm gonna make it 10 feet and be gasping for breath. So I try and keep walking casually as quickly as I can. And the two of them sort of beeline toward me and cut me off. And then the other guy, in Russian, they start talking a little bit. And then they switch to English when they realize that I'm an English speaker. And what's the guy saying? Who dropped the money? Hey, did you guys see me drop like $30,000 back there? And we're both like, what? Dollars? Rubles? I don't know. And so he says, do you mind if I look? And the guy who picked up the money, I'm like, ooh, this is gonna be interesting. He says, sure, go ahead, look in my pockets. And so he gives him his pat down. It's very cursory, not a super good pat down. Checks around his belt, maybe a little bit around his socks. Yeah, okay, I guess you don't have my $30,000. How about you? And that's when I'm like, oh man, we've gone from drug deal to near death, now I'm getting mugged. This is it. This is the moment I get mugged in Moscow. So I slowly take out my phone out of my pocket, my keys out of my other pocket, and I'm taking these little baby steps back, trying to act cool, but not to let them get too close to me. And then I'm like, that's it, that's all I've got. And then the guy says, what about the back pocket? Oh no, this is the moment where he steals my wallet. And I take out my wallet very slowly and open it up, and I've kind of got my hands all around it so he can see there's not $30,000 in it. And it's just a couple of $100 US. He looks at it and says, well, I guess you don't have it. And I say, yep, I told you so. And I beeline it back for the park. I walk as fast as I can while yet still trying to be casual and not look like I'm concerned. I make it around the corner and I am totally winded. My mouth is completely dry. I'm gasping for breath, leaning against the wall of a building right by the park. What am I gonna do now? I go into full problem-solving mode. I'm like, I've seen this in the movies before. I need to burn my clothes. I need to dye my hair. I need to shave my beard. I need to never be seen on the streets again. So I jump in a cab back to the hotel. I'm safe, I think. And I have a beer. I wind down. I think about the story and try and get like some thoughts and answers about this. I'm not really coming up with anything. The next morning, I'm driving to work with my colleagues, 2 Russian guys, and I'm telling them this story, and they're both, sort of listening, sort of, whatever. And one of them, the more senior guy who I trust a little bit more, he turns around to me and says, damn, you're lucky to be alive. They shoot people in Moscow for $300. And I was like, oof, I know it. I knew it. I was lucky to be alive, and I escaped death. And then, in true Russian fashion, the other guy, my other colleague, turns around to me and says, hey, it's no big deal. They do this kind of thing all the time. It's like entertainment for tourists. It's just fun, no worries. And that's when I remember that I love the contradictions of Russia, just not when it's between entertainment and death for me.